What was your OHH? So that's what it was for moment. That took you too long to find out. When I was around 8 or 9 years old, I really enjoyed it when my dad and I would go visit a friend of his who was into woodworking. The woodworker had an amazing workshop. Always warm and cozy with a wood stove in the corner. It was a great place to hang out. While hanging out, I'd usually go exploring, examining the huge variety of strange tools, machines, and cuts of wood. I had no idea how any of it worked, but I didn't care. It was also interesting. One day, while exploring some out-of-the-way shelves, I discovered a large cardboard box containing all kinds of wood shavings and sawdust. The wood shavings were amazingly intricate, mostly spirals of varying size with really interesting grain patterns and textures. I was amazed at the artistic quality of these spiral-shaped works of natural art. I proceeded to rummage through the box and rake through the shavings in an attempt to find the coolest looking examples. While doing this, I felt the sense that I was being watched. I looked, and sure enough, the adults were staring at me in a really strange way. No matter, I thought. They're adults, and they are weird. I decided to ignore them. I continued to sift through the box, on a mission to find more cool shavings. A short time later, I noticed they were still staring at me with the strangest expressions. Finally, I cracked. Exasperated, I demanded to know exactly what the hell they found so fascinating. The woodworker spoke up. Well, son, we just ain't never seen nobody playing the litter box like that. How to tie my shoes. Buckle up, there's levels to this. Part 1. My wife always used to double knot her shoelaces. I'd watch her pick them apart to get her shoes off, and I asked her why she does that. I don't know, they always come undone. One day I noticed that when she pulls the bows of her knot, they lie up and down her foot, not across it. A few minutes playing around, and I realized it matters which way you make your knots. If the granny knot underneath goes the opposite direction from the way you pull your bows, you're actually tying a square knot with bows, not a double knot with bows. A square knot is a non-binding knot, so your shoelaces will come untied very easily. The remedy is simple. If your shoelaces come undone, look and see which way your bows naturally lie. If they are going along your foot instead of across it, undo your knot and tie the granny knot the opposite way you normally do, then continue as usual. The bows will lie across your foot, and the knot will stay until you pull it out. To see why, take some rope and tie a simple double knot, just one granny on top of the other, and tighten it. It won't come out easily. Seriously, do this with string you can just throw away. Now do it again, but reverse the direction of one of the knots and you have a square knot. See how easily it falls apart. Part 2. If you run, your running shoes have a feature called heel lock that you're probably not using. Did you ever wonder what those eyelets are for that head around your ankle? The ones you never put your shoelaces through because they are too high up. Those are for using heel lock. Part 3. You're in this now. You've come this far, so you have to leave with some next level shoe tying. The Ian knot. Didn't take too long to figure out, but years ago I was called out to do summer/V service at a house near Arlington, Washington. The map showed the place was in a gated community. I got in the gate and drove the neighborhood. It was a weird neighborhood. The streets were really wide and had a 15 miles per hour speed limit. And the weirdest bit, all the street signs were about 3 feet tall. Even the stop signs. It was like a street system for midgets. Also, all the houses had huge garage doors. Not 2 or 3 doors, just one giant ass door. I got to my client's house and the lady of the house let me in. I got to work fixing broken things. The whole time I was wondering about this weird neighborhood. Like, what the fuck? The wife walked into the room and asked how I was doing, how long it would take. I told her I'd be wrapped up in about an hour. She asked if I could stay until her husband got home because he was the home theater fan. She said he should be home soon. I kept working. Then the husband came home. In an airplane. From out the window I saw a Cessna taxi up the road, pull into the driveway, and park in the garage. The husband came inside, greeted the wife, and asked me how it was going. I told him I was wrapping up. Did he have questions? etc. I couldn't hold it in. I asked him what the fuck was going on. He explained that this neighborhood was for Boeing employees. They use the Arlington airport, taxi into the neighborhood, and park in their garages. Each day they get to fly to work, up above the choked I-5 traffic. Then they fly home, park, and have dinner. It was so awesome. I was way jelly. It's like the goddamn Jetsons. Just a couple of weeks ago I was watching Netflix in my dorm, 2 doors down from the laundry room on my floor. Suddenly, my door opened and someone asked me if I knew why that end of the hallway was flooding. I go into the hallway, mildly interested, to see that the water is clearly pouring out of the washing machine onto the floor, and the floor drain doesn't work. I run into the room and try to hold the door to the washing machine shut, and it seems to be working. I tell the kid who grabbed me from my room to call the campus police to send a custodian to help. He does, and it should take about 10 minutes to get there for him. I move to walk away as I feel I've already done my part in this situation and I'm currently standing in an inch of water. But now, when I stop pushing on the door, it bursts open, some clothes spill out, and my pants are soaked. Instead of taking that as my cue to leave, I close the door and let it fill up again. A few wet minutes later the custodian arrives, looks me up and down, and asks why didn't you just turn off the water? While gesturing to the clearly marked switch on the wall with 2 labels, on and off. Oh, that's what that's for. I love cooking. I'm no professional, but I think I'm a decent home cook. My parents, on the other hand, are terrible with food. You don't ever want to experience what my mom considers chicken and dumpling soup. As a teenager, I would often notice these weird soap-shaped hunks of steel at other people's houses, usually while babysitting for wealthy neighbors or visiting the homes of friends. My family was broke as a joke, and combined with my parents' lackluster cooking abilities, we obviously didn't have many kitchen gadgets. So logically, my brain just dismissed these fake soaps as some sort of kitchen tchotchke for rich people. In my early 20s I heard the pro tip that rubbing your hands on stainless steel would eliminate strong odors, like garlic. Still, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. At the time, I was mostly hanging out with other broke college students, for whom a working can opener was considered a fancy kitchen gadget. Didn't see any fake metal soap bars for a while. You know what they say. Out ta sight, out ta mind. Over a holiday break one of my parents' rich neighbors asked me to house sit. I spent the first evening enthusiastically utilizing their fully stocked refrigerator. I was standing at the sink, after chopping a ridiculous amount of garlic, looking for some regular soap, when I caught sight of their phony, steel soap bar. And it clicked. A funny coincidence, my so had the exact same revelation yesterday. He asked why I was rubbing my hands on the faucet. I told him the thing about stainless steel removing smells, and in passing, said we really should get some of that fake metal soap. Cue his enlightened "oh, that's what that is." Summer of 2006 I was working for Caldive on a tiny jack-up boat in the Gulf of Mexico doing hurricane repair work on pipelines. We got called one day to get over to platform such and such to take over a job from Global because they couldn't get this task done. We pulled in while they were pulling out, also on a tiny jack-up. They waved, we waved back. Over the next 3 days we did what they had already done, step for step. The task was installing a pig catcher, so the guys on land could pig the pipe. This means using gas pressure to shoot a big Nerf bullet through the pipe to clean it out. When the pig reaches the other end it gets caught in the pig trap. First we used a needle valve to try to bleed off what pressure and fluid remained in the pipe. It never stopped. So we decided to open the flange face anyway and catch what came out in oil dabbers. We did that, and it still never stopped. Then we decided to bleed the pipe down into a cuttings box. Lo and behold, there was a cuttings box already in place, next to one that was full. Clearly the Global guys had already done this, but we did it too. The pipe still flowed. After a couple more days of trying different things, each accompanied by the realization that the Global crew had also done that, the guys on land called to let us know they had the wrong pipe. I was driving my BMW to work, getting flipped off as much as usual. Then I ran upon a traffic jam. Colossal wreck about 30 yards ahead, and a sign in my lane telling us to get over. For some reason, the lights on the back of every car were broken, as only one of their emergency lights was working. Assuming coincidence, I waited for some polite person to let me over as is their responsibility. Too much waiting. I learned that the cars with a broken emergency light were being allowed over first. Oh, how humanity caters to the disabled, I exclaimed. After forcing my way over and receiving my entitled bird, I went onwards in my adventure to work as an eyes auditor. Lightning strikes and I began to grow impatient. The cars ahead of me slowed down, of all things, during the heavens cathartic flush. I zipped between cars as they were braking and would receive my honk of good fortune that signaled me over with good faith. The terrified looks of pedestrians as they turned their worrying eyes past my windshield and into my determined face told me the storm was getting stronger. Eager to arrive safely, I reached for my windshield wipers. As I began to twist to the minimalist setting, a sudden cramp spawned my hand upwards. A strange and rhythmic alien clicking ensued. I noticed the cars on my right halting and waving me onwards. Curious, I reached for the stick again, this time pushing downwards. Avast. The train on my left corroborated that my car was indeed capable of transitioning my intent of motion from mere whim into an expressed thought. Oh, if only every car was capable of letting the ones around it know what their intent was in a reasonable enough time to act accordingly. Point TLDR, the stick beside the wheel is a turn signal and some ignorant facts go on with their day expecting us to read minds. Finally understanding the term rubberneckers. I grew up in the suburbs of New York City, and as I'm 42 now, the radio was still listened to a lot. With morning and evening work commutes, traffic updates seemed always to be on. I'd always hear the reporters say things like, "And at the Holland you're looking at least a 20-minute slowdown due to rubberneckers." Being a child, I never really understood what that meant. Fast forward 20 to 25 years recently, after moving back to the Tri-State area after an extended stint living out in South Lake Tahoe, the local traffic updates still were of importance to the everyone living in the area and always on. Sure as shit, within a few days of returning to New York I started hearing the term rubberneckers used frequently, and I still ignorant if its meaning and why so often used. Point secured myself a job in the Bronx and became a true hustle and bustle New York City commuter. Traffic had only grown worse in my 10 years of living the good life out west. That followed roughly 5 years of college and living in the city for another 5 after graduation. Although I worked in Manhattan and commuted from Brooklyn every day, the traffic reports were of little importance as its subway system is the circulatory system of the city and carried its inhabitants to and from work every day, avoiding the mess on the roadways. Finally I'm en route to work in the Bronx and sitting in stopped lines of traffic as far as the eye could see. Are listening to WFAN radio, and during the 20/20 update I hear there's the remnants of an earlier accident on the northbound lanes of the Bronx River Parkway causing major delays to the southbound lanes due to rubberneckers. What does that fuck mean? About 30 minutes later I'm passing the cleanup crew at work on the other side of the parkway and I realize this must be what they were talking about in the fan. Barely creeping past the scene on the other side of the road I can see open road ahead, and I'm cursing and saying out loud to no one but myself, why is this taking so long if there's nobody up ahead? Then I see it and it all becomes too obvious and clear. I start laughing out loud to myself. I can the drivers, if every vehicle in front of me come to an almost complete stop and turning their heads to the left to completely and totally immerse themselves in the scene on the other side. Really, no traffic ahead, and we are barely moving, cause these idiots are staring at the other side of the road. Point by the time the third car in front of me is starting to accelerate, I see the light bulb flash above my head and now it makes so much sense and find it hard to believe that couldn't solve this secret term's meaning sooner. As the idiots leading the way in front of traffic are starting at nothing, it hits me like a knockout punch from a prize fighter. Oh my god, I can't believe I didn't know this by now. People are so mesmerized with violence, death, and accidents that it's a wonder how nobody broke their neck trying to get a better look at the situation, which shouldn't affect them as it's not in our lanes. Rubberneckers is a radio-friendly term used to describe these jerk-offs. The people that no longer focus upon the open road only feet in front of them, but somehow are able to contour their necks in ways unimaginable to be sure they looked at everything on the other side of the parkway several times before feeling confident that they took the whole thing in with no regard for delays they are increasing for every car behind them. The staring is so engrossing that it's almost as if their necks are made of rubber, now allowing them to have unusual control of the neck and ensure everyone is going to be even later to get to work. Wow, 20-ish years in the making, and it's basically just calling a large bunch of commuters out as being jerk-offs or douchebags for letting themselves be lured in by the siren songs on the other road which shouldn't concern them anyway. Go figure that out. Secret code 4. If you're staring at the accident that happened way before you got here on the other side of the road, then you are a jerk-off and are only further lengthening the already long delays caused by the accident on the other side of the street. A personal message to any rubberneckers who may happen to read this. Don't fucking do this anymore. You are only increasing the anger levels of everyone behind you because you can't keep your face out of something that doesn't involve you nor be fixed in any way by your catatonic like staring. Pay attention to your own issues and keep it moving, buddy. We all got somewhere to be and you are screwing everyone and playing a bit part in the movie called How to Screw People and ensure they have a miserable day. Man, I can't even write this without babbling on and on and on and on. Gotta figure out how to be more concise and not be so damn long-winded with my posts. My apologies to anyone who happens to read this and is disappointed that they wasted so much time reading my gibberish. To anyone reading this that shares a similar view or have been enlightened by this commonly used yet covert and an indirect insult for the root of our stress and misery, thanks for reading and let me know what ya think. To anyone reading this that's saying to themselves now, wait, I always look at these accidents, you're insulting me. Too bad. Focus on what concerns or involves you and take a second to think how you impact many other people. Your staring ain't helping anyone and it's definition not fixing the accident, so please keep moving and don't be a rubbernecker. Way super late to the party, as usual, but here's mine. 4 years I've been hearing how important it is to start investing, especially at a young age, because of compound interest. Even if you invest $100, that doubles to $200, then $400, then $800, then $1,600, then $3,200, then $6,400. Then. Something the ups guy had $70 million by the time he retired. So I didn't understand where I could invest my money to allow it to compound. I just assumed every investment just accumulates shitty interest. The other day, I was talking with a guy who was telling me about investing and how I can invest in a Roth IRA and it accumulates interest at a decent amount, maybe 10% give or take, but that every 5-7 years, your initial investment doubles. That's where the compounding is. But the maximum you can invest per year is $5,500. And you must take out your investment by age 70. So if you start investing at age 18, you can have so many more cycles of doubling, which gets you millions and millions by age 70. But if you start investing at age 38, then you only get a few cycles of doubling, which only gets you a few six figures. Now I feel like a dummy for not stating earlier, especially considering how stupidly easy it is to invest. But better late than never. I have kinda two of these, not so much a no moment, but total misunderstanding, that I proudly passed on 4 years. The first one is my dad used to work in a dairy farm and some days I would hang with him at work. He used to do this little talk for the tourists and they could milk a cow and taste fresh milk. He used to joke, now I know, that if people wanted to try some low-fat milk he could go and get calf for them to milk, but they normally don't much like being milked. I'm sure I told this snippet to over 100 people. 4 years I was amazed into my 20s and 30s how much low-fat milk there was, and how it was cheaper than regular milk, even when I was positive it was harder to get a hold of. Less teats and all. She's second was with my brother, he is 4 years older, and got his car license at 18, I was 14. We were driving through some heavy rain, and he was explaining how the car would handle differently when we hit large puddles. He even explained aquaplaning. Close to home we hit a rather large patch of water, and it went all up the sides of the car, and over the windscreen. I whooped in excitement, but he said he had to be careful the water did not cut out the engine. Fast forward to me explaining to my mid-20-year-old friends, to their sheer delight, how if you hit a puddle of water fast enough your engine in your car could physically fall out. Thanks bro. Thanks dad. I had just met with my host family in Genoa, Italy. After talking with them for a while, I went to the bathroom and saw a bidet for the first time in my life. I just casually glanced at it curiously for a few seconds and went back outside. I knew it resembled a toilet, but not quite, so it puzzled me. I went back to my host to inquire about this interesting device. I asked if it was a type of sink for children to use, since it was close to the ground. She laughed a bit and said no. Then I asked if you are supposed to use it to clean your feet. That's when she quickly agreed with me and said that is indeed what it's used for. I accepted this answer and then commented further by saying that the device might as well try to double as a kid's sink, and she just half nodded and tried to tactfully get off the subject, unbeknownst to me. Apparently she thought the situation was funny as hell and immediately told her friends about what had happened. The next day, we were all at lunch and one of her friends turns the conversation to me. She said, "Chris, we have a confession to make. That thing in the bathroom is not really used for your feet." They all started busting out laughing and told me the background story and the truth behind the purpose of a bidet. Fun memories. So this one took me 5 years to figure out. I remember it like it was yesterday. The summer of my freshman year in high school, the orchestra I played with went on a trip to Germany and Austria. We flew into Munich and went straight to the hotel. It was a nice place and the rooms were comfortable. We each had a roommate. I'm still close friends with mine. The best part of the whole trip though was new parents. It was every kid's dream to go away for 2 weeks alone. Now of course we had chaperones, but they barely paid us any attention. We got settled in the room and we had about 30 minutes of free time. I took a quick nap and woke up nice and refreshed. As was my usual routine, I had to go number 2. Luckily the bathrooms were very nice, a little different than what I was used to. I'm from the US and our bathrooms are all the same. This hotel bathroom felt weird and I couldn't figure out why. Everything felt backwards. I sat down on the throne and looked down into the bowl. The drain was in the front and the water was very shallow but running. I do the duty and tidy up, stand up, look down and see a nearly perfect pile of plop sitting on the bottom of the bowl. I flush and the water shoots out in a stream and slowly slides the guano to the drain and thump. It sucked it down the drain, followed by the TP. I washed my hands and went about my day. It was a great trip and I wish I could go back. Flash forward to March 2017. I'm telling my friends about this weird toilet I used in Germany when it dawned on me. Growing up I never learned about modern European culture or foreign filters in general. Until I experienced the different culture I became fascinated by it. I read about things online, in books, and took a class on it. Eventually I read about the different bathrooms you can find over there. Specifically how some places you don't wipe, you rinse with a bidet. I shit in a bidet. Posted this in another AskReddit, but here goes my sad story again. I learned to drive standard, and for at least a few months, I didn't knew the third gear even existed. Instead, I went straight from second gear to fifth gear during all that time. I remember I even got weirded out by how the car slowed down when I went from what I thought was third to fourth. But I shrugged it off as just another strange thing cars do. As for why the hell it took me so long to realize it, my mistake was twofold. For one, I began my driving lessons thinking that I already knew everything I needed to know about how gear shifting worked, including the shift pattern, so my parents never even bothered explaining it, thrusting that I already understood that part. The next issue was that my family's car has a slightly strange shift pattern, where the reverse is hidden and only activated via a lever in the gear knob. This means that there's only 2 possible shift positions on the bottom, second and fourth, but 3 possible positions on the top, first, third, and fifth. Basically, my dumb 18-year-old brain didn't register this asymmetry, and so my method consisted of pulling the gear knob towards me and going from first to second, and then pushing it away from me up and down, in my mind, clearing the third and fourth gears. It never crossed my mind that the way to reach the third gear position was to leave the knob centered and just push forward. In the end, it wasn't but until I drove for the first time on a highway that I found myself searching for the mysterious fifth gear all the way on the right of the gear stick that I realized that there was a whole other shift position in between. Not my brightest moment. I watched an aha moment of a guy I was dating. He and his brother shared a house and his brother had the better room. When his brother moved out, he decided to switch. It was taking his brother too long to come get the few remaining items in the room, so he packed up the last couple of things. Around this time was my friend's birthday. My group of friends have a really dark and perverse sense of humor. The birthday girl was a 24-year-old virgin, waiting for marriage kind of deal. We teased her relentlessly, but lovingly, about God's loophole and other such things. Before her night out we went to the adult store and bought purple and pink anal beads and fashioned them into a necklace, then hid them amongst other colorful beaded necklaces. It was a very well crafted disguise with a traditional birthday girl sash and tiara. We were giggling to ourselves all night about how she was wearing sex toys as costume jewelry. I told the guy I was dating about our hilarious joke as we were looking at photos of the night. He got a quizzical expression and then went a little wide-eyed. The oh my god look quickly turned to an EWW look when he realized that he had touched and ever so lovingly packed up his brother's anal beads.